We'll be picking up in Revelation chapter 8. You remember last week we finished up in chapters 6 and 7. We finished up the opening of the 7 seals. And now we're turning to the 7 trumpets. I'd like to go back to a couple of verses. Well, before I say that before we get started into this, what you're going to find as we read through these 7 trumpets is you're going to find what we're discussing is very familiar. Because it is basically what we just discussed in the 7 seals. Now, a lot of people want to put, there were the 7 seals, and then the 7 trumpets, and then the 7 bowls. But when you dig into the scripture here and look at it, these are not consecutive, these are simultaneous. Excuse me. In fact, what they're talking about, or God is, and Jesus is saying here, is we're really talking about the same events. Okay? Only he's using different symbolism to describe what's going on. And as we're going to see, that it gets the things that happen are going to get, descriptions are going to get worse and worse and worse. Okay? So I just laid that out there that these are consecutive, and you're going to see a lot of similarity between the two. One thing we didn't talk about, I wanted to go back to verse 3 of chapter 8. Said, and another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer, and he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of the saints on the golden altar before the throne, and the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from the hand of the angel. Very important that out of this scripture we get that our prayers rise up before God. And in this symbolism here, they are mixed in this with this incense. Now, this is not making our prayers better. This is not adding to them or anything, but it is this symbolism of this fragrance. That this is what our prayers mean to God. Okay? This is how God sees our prayers. And so if you're thinking, does God hear me? Does God really care? Does God really, do I really want to even pray tonight? Does he? When you get to maybe feeling, and I have sometimes, are you listening? This is how much our prayers mean to God. That how he sees them are this beautiful fragrance that comes up before him. And that he hears every one of them. They rose before God from the hand of the angel. Okay, now, again, very much symbolism, but still, I wanted to make sure we didn't really touch on that last time. So whenever you get to thinking or discouraged or whatever, or wondering about your prayer life, don't. If you're talking to God, this is how your prayers go up before him. So that's another thing he's trying to show these Christians, is that in all this noise and all this stuff that's going on around you and all the tribulation thing you're going for, one constant in all this is that God is hearing your prayers and that he does care. And verse 5 says, then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth, and there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashings of light, and earthquake. This is almost symbolizing that the justice of God and his vengeance, I guess you want to say, a lot of that comes from our prayers to him. Okay? Our suffering. The prayers we saw earlier, the saints under the altar, how long? How long is it going to be? God says patience is going to be there, but God hears those prayers, and he is going to act. Okay. Let's start with verse 6 and look at the 7 trumpets. Now, again, keep in mind that these are a parallel to what we've already discussed. So just keep that in mind as we go here. So let's start in verse 6. Now the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared to blow them. Okay? The first angel blew his trumpet, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood, and these were thrown upon the earth, and a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. Okay, these first 4 we're going to find are very short. He's very concise and to the point. Okay? I'm sorry, I've got to get the notes here. Here we go. So the verse begins, the trumpet judgments, and should noted that they are tempered with mercy. We're going to find in each of these, as we see in this one, a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees burned up, and the green grass, and all the green grass burned up. Okay, we see this third. So keep in mind as we go through these catastrophes, if you want to use that word, or these things that are going to be happening. God's still in control here. Okay, God's still in control, and that His mercy is still being shown. That only a third part, okay, again, it's very symbolic, but only a third part will be affected by this. Okay. The seal judgments were really, if we remember, were ordinary events. We kind of talked about that. All right, they were things that went on and all that. These seem to be almost, I hate to use the word supernatural, but they represent a direct intervention from God, which we really didn't see that before. We had the natural, if you want to use it, the natural catastrophes, which, again, God created. But they were these natural catastrophes. Here we see almost God's hand in this. Okay? Now, what are we talking about? Hail and fire mixed with blood. Of course, that's all symbolic, okay? But it's trying to describe we're back to, remember the first horse on we talked about before, with these natural catastrophes. Here we see these things, but with even a greater, almost, they mix the word, he uses the word blood in here, mixed with blood, hail and fire and blood. Okay, we're thrown upon the earth. Well, we don't see that. But we do see these great fires. We do see all these natural catastrophes. Some of them, we hear about, fire here and fires there, but some of them, ever so often we hear, are quite extensive. Okay? And we're going to see these first 4 are going to be on the earth itself, nature, and then the last 2 we're going to see is going to be against man himself. So I'm sorry I'm jumping around just a little bit, but I'm notes. So anyway, this first trumpet again is like the first horseman. It's these natural disasters, okay? It's this natural environment. And again, it begins to show that God's intervention in the nature itself. God's still in control of this world. Okay, He's still in control. But what happened, we were never, as we talked about before, we were never meant to live in this world. When God created us, this was not the plan. This was not what God wanted. He wanted us to live with Him and always. We brought sin in the world, or sin came in, we fell for it. And then what did God do? What did He tell Adam? One of the things, the curses He told Adam, he was going to have to do. Ladies were going to have childbirth. And what about the men? What did he say the curse of the man was? I'm sorry? Till the earth. Okay, the earth was going to be cursed. It was going to bring up thorns and thistles. I think this stuff is even part of that. Okay, this is Robbie here. Okay, but I believe these catastrophes we see, all these natural disasters, all that was part of this cursing of the earth. And these were the things. I need daily Bible readers, please. Daily Bible readers. Okay, so the first sounded, we got the hellfire. Again, it's this hellfire blood capsule on earth. Again, it actually can't be burned up and all that. But what have we seen in physical things around us? One more time. Forest fires, droughts, swamps, raging rivers, ice storms, hurricanes. Okay, the whole bit. We have seen, even here in this country, we have seen natural disasters that have been on a larger scale than some or most. All right, Katrina. All right, Mount St. Helens. Okay, that were just, some would say almost, apocalyptic, if you want to say that, according to what we see here. And that's not, but it's all God's response to, I won't say God's response, I hate to say it that way, but because of the wickedness of man, all these things take place, and we have to deal with them, and we have to live among them. But why does he do that? Well, why is that here? Is there a purpose behind that? I believe so, but we'll show that here in a few minutes. Just keep that in mind as we go. So the first one is the fire and all that, okay? And it's the natural disaster, like I won't say all natural disasters, but fires and things. Again, this picture, though, gives it an even more catastrophic feel to it than what we saw in the first set of pictures that we saw, okay? But again, this is nothing, these are not predicting anything specific. Okay, you can't go through and say, okay, well, this was that in this part of history, or this was that in that part of history. There's a lot of things that will fall into these, and I think those are what it's talking about. But there's not just one, this is not some prophetic thing about something that's going to happen down the road. These are things that are continually happening in our world today. They did then, and they continue till today, and they will continue to happen until God comes and destroys this world. Excuse me. Oops, wrong thumb. All right, let's move to verse 8. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. And now we take our sort of the focus from the land, if you want to say that. And now we're looking at the sea, okay, and all that. A third of the ocean turned to blood, and yet 2/3 of the... So, this, again, this is very symbolic, all right? Because we don't see, how can a third of the oceans turn to blood, yet 2/3 of the air shipping still remain active upon it? It's impossible, okay? All right? It says here a third of the ships are destroyed. Again, we're looking at catastrophes on the ocean itself. That's what we're talking about here. All right? And again, this is not pointing to anything specific, but how many of these naval or maritime disasters that we've seen in time? We've seen this quite often. It's not particular. Again, is this predicting a particular one? No. A lot of people want to say, "Oh, this was talking about the Great Spanish Armada." If you remember your history, or if you ever got to that point in your history, okay, it was a great naval defeat. It's not talking about any. That's part of it, but he's saying what's being told here is the devastation that's going to be coming is not just limited to the land; it's on the ocean also. And that back then, what was the main thing used for trade besides on the land? Was shipping, right? That's what you hear a lot about. So this would have meant a lot to them. That a third of that disappearing, okay, that would mean quite a bit of destruction for them, and a lot of heartache and affecting their lives. So again, this one is pointing to that, all right, and how devastating that was going to be. This is not pointing to one particular event, but all these in general that we see on this land. So we've looked at the land. Okay, now the second angel blew and it affected the sea. All right. One of the other there, it says that let's see, I'm sorry. Like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and the third sea became blood. There are some that want to point to, who remembers the word name Krakatoa? Does anybody remember that name? Oh, come on. Sure, you've at least heard the name. Okay. The burning mountain cat, somebody want to attribute this to that specific event. It's not, but it does kind of resemble it. In 1883, the 2,623-foot mountain Krakatoa in the Sunday Strait in Indonesia literally exploded. Okay? Very similar to what we saw with Mount St. Helens, but on a bigger scale than that. Literally exploded, burned up completely, and fell into the sea. It was on the coast there, and it fell into the sea. And the waters where the mountain stood, having been 1,000 feet, it was thought to have destroyed 1 billion lives. Some tidal waves reached England, more than 11,000 miles away, and the explosion was actually heard in Bangkok at a distance of 3,000 miles. Okay? So these huge catastrophes that we're hearing here, this is what this is pointing at. Not this one specifically, but God is saying, this is what we're seeing. This is what we're going to be seeing, and this is the world you're going to have to live in. And it is a warning. I won't say a warning. It is letting us know that He's aware of what's happening in this world. All right, let's go to verse 10. The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. Springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many people died from the water because it had been made bitter. All right. In this case, there fell from heaven a great star. A lot of people want to attribute this to Satan and the devil. That is not who's being talked about right here. We don't know for sure. And it may just be, a symbolic meaning here. But this is not talking about Lucifer, or they want to attribute it to some of the great, like Attila the Hun, or other leaders or conquerors that were, had come and destroyed the world. That's not what this one's talking about. We really don't know exactly that this one is even attributed to something specific. All right? But wormwood, in this name, though, even though the angel's not identifiable, wormwood, I say that 5 times fast, wormwood is symbolic of bitter sorrow. And if you go back to the Lamentations 3, verse 19, it's used there. Solomon uses there. And it is given the name of the star. So symbolic of the star falling on the earth is sorrow or bitterness. Okay? Now, what's so special? How can waters and rivers, fountains turn into bitter sorrow for people? All right? Anybody ever hear, does anybody hear or know somebody that lives on a farm or out in the country that has a well, or did at one time? All right? What was the biggest concern that usually in the back of people's mind that had that their water came from a well? Dry up. Right? Or the water get contaminated, right? And if that happened, it was not a good thing, right? Because now your water supply is completely cut off, okay? Also, what this is symbolizing, so it's symbolizing some of that. Water is very important to us, all right? Fresh water and all that, it's life, right? And if that gets affected, then it becomes a great bitterness on us and so forth like that. Also, has anyone ever been through a flood at all? Anyone here been through floods? I know, we had a lot recently, not too many years ago, here in Middle Tennessee and all that, where it flooded out. And great areas, and people lost their homes, lost their farms, lost a lot of things because of it. because of these natural catastrophes dealing with the water. Okay? And that's what this is pointing at, is that the effect of this catastrophes upon of these angels here. And these, again, these natural disasters, these things of the world that are taking place that we live in and we have to deal with. All right? And it's something where we're not exempt from this. You know, God gave us protection. He said we're His children. But we still have to live in this world. You're in this world, but not of this world. But we're still in this world. And these are still things that we have to deal with. These trumpet visions and such that things, they are not mere accidents of nature. Moreover, they are restrained, though. What was the one, what was the promise after the ark? What did God promise to Noah or to us? He would never destroy the whole world again, okay, by flood. Now, He's going to one of these days when He comes back, but He'd never destroy the world again by flood. So that was the temper of God's mercy, and this is part of that. This is part of God's mercy, that even though we have these huge natural catastrophes and all these things that are being told about here, again, we have that a third of. These are not going to destroy the whole world. Now, we've seen them that come in, that's got a pretty good chunk of it, but not all. And God does restrain them from doing that. Okay. I know we're going through this quickly, but I want to get through all the trumpets today. The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars. I'm in verse 12. And a third of the day might be kept from shining. A third of the stars, so that a third of their light might be darkened, and a third of the day might be kept from shining, and likewise a third of the night. This one's a little harder to really understand here. What is he actually talking about? Now, a lot of people want to put, well, we just saw an eclipse. That's really not what he's talking about here. Okay, things like that. They try to make it part of, it's had Roman legion, that they deal with some of the Romans and all that. It's really not. You notice in this one he says the third part, or a third, is repeated 5 times in this verse. Okay? Emphasizing the limitation God has placed upon atmospheric disasters also, for the limitation of man's benefit. Again, we see that third. So even though we have, and that's, I think, one of the things we pull from this part of Scripture, even though we have these disasters, even though we have these things that take place, okay, God has tempered them. He's saying they're never going to take out the entire world. Okay, they're never going to take out all this. There will be some major disasters. We've seen them, we'll see them again. But they will never, God limits them so that they would never wipe out the entire, all of us, or this world we live in. Can man do that? There's the scary about the nuclear race back when. That was the big fear, if y'all remember. The big fear was, we were going to wipe out the entire world. I guess it would have been possible, but I don't see God allowing that to happen. Not till He's ready, anyway. But that's not the way He said He was going to do it. So, we take from this that even though we go through all these disasters, even though these things have been unleashed on the world through nature and all that, these things affect the world. But in turn, since it's affecting the earth, guess who it affects? Us. And we have to deal with it. But, everybody else sees this as gloom and doom, but what I take out of these scriptures, these 4 trumpets, is God saying, even though you're dealing with this, I'm still in control of it. And that I will not allow it to do more than I say it will. So we can always take heart in that. Okay, so that's the first 4 of the trumpets. Now we're going to go on to the next 2. Now, if you remember, when we had the 4 horsemen, and then we moved on to the other seals. The first 4 horsemen dealt with, remember, same thing. these natural disasters, things that happened on the earth and all that. And then the last two seals dealt with man himself. The same thing's going to happen here. But we're going to see it even in a more darker sense than what was portrayed in the first two seals, or the seals 5 and 6. Okay? Verse 13 sets this up, saying, Then I looked and I heard a cry, Then I looked and I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew directly overhead. Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, and the blast of the other trumpets that the three angels are about to blow. That's an encouraging message. Okay? John's got to be going, what now? Okay? Notice the woe 3 times, which you remember Jesus, he would say verily, verily twice, just to emphasize. This has the word woe 3 times, which means this is serious. Okay? Woe, woe, woe to those who go. Also, there's 3 woes coming up. All right? This is intended as an ominous sign. The eagle chosen, perhaps, again, this is John trying to convey to us. I think this is actual eagle. There's one of the commentators that said that word could be translated as vulture, which in the sense of what's about to happen, that might be even a better word for it. What do we know vulture for? If you see vulture circling, what does that usually mean? Something's dead. Usually we associate vultures with death. Okay, again, here being a bird of prey could be the same thing. But John and those that translate it thought eagle was a better translation of that. But again, they say it could be either or. The first 4 trumpets, as we said, sent directly upon part of the world of nature. These next 3 are going to be sent to men directly, where, again, the first 4 were indirectly against man. Okay, so let's move on to so this is setting up the beginning of chapter 9 and setting up for the last 3 trumpets here. Going to making that delineation between what the first 4 were talking about and now what the last 3 are going to deal with. Again, just like we saw previously with the seals. The last 3 are designated woes. These last 3 woes contrast with the first 4 trumpets in that their judgments fall directly on men, where, as we said, the first 4 fell upon the environment, and felt by us because of what we live. Okay. The picture of terror mounts in its awful intensity, and we're going to see that here as we read through these last 3 trumpets. What we're seeing here is we've moved beyond the terrors that we're going to see. If you want to use this embellished language a little bit, the terrors we're about to see coming up are beyond nature, and I use the word demonic, but this is from demons. We're going to see Satan entering the scene here, okay, in these last 3 trumpets. So let's go. Let's go on to verse 1 and let's get into it, and we'll talk about that. So in verse 1 of chapter 9, and the 5th angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star falling from heaven to earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any green plant or any tree, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were allowed to torment them for 5 months, but not to kill them. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings someone. And in those days, people will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them. Okay, let's stop there. Remember the first 4 trumpets? How many verses did he contribute to the first 4 trumpets each? 2 maybe, 2, 3, right? On this trumpet, we're down to 6 verses and we're not done with him yet. That is the emphasis being placed on these last 3 and the terrors that are coming with it. Okay? This case, this falling angel here, or this falling star, the star falling from heaven, okay, this star must be Satan, okay? Why? Because he was given the keys to this bottomless pit. That's what his realm's been referred to, all right? Also, if you look in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12, it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?" It seems, therefore, that Satan himself here is referred to under his symbol, the star of Satan. Okay? The pit is opened by one who is a fallen star. Again, no doubt this is Satan. Okay, so this is actually Satan falling, okay, to earth. The only fallen star in the sense of this passage is in the entire Bible is Satan. Jesus said, "I beheld Satan falling as lightning from heaven," Luke chapter 10, verse 18. Okay, so this is actually symbolizing Satan's fall to earth. And he's given the keys to open this abyss. Okay? And revealed the abyss as the abode of the devil and demons. Okay, and this is the symbolism of evil being released on the world. Okay? The evil being released on the world. And to torment us and to deal with us. And we know, what is the thing Satan goes about what? As what? Roaring lion seeking to devour. Okay? We saw Jesus dealing with many demons and so forth in his ministry, having to do that. All right? We see, but it's even more than that. This is, as we're going to get to here in just a minute. So this has been this took place a long time ago, even before this was even written, that this happened. And we see where he opens the pit and there went smoke up out of the pit. Anybody want to take a guess what is symbolized here by the smoke? It fills all the earth, right? It says, like a smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Okay? Anybody want to guess what would you think the smoke is symbolizing here? Evil. But in what sense? Everything? The smoke here in the locust, and we're going to talk about the locust. Probably won't get to the locust till next week. I thought I'd get it done, but there's a lot here. The smoke here in the locust are I hate to use the word hellish teachings. That's what the commentator I've looked. But we're also talking about teachings, influences, thought styles, intellectual delusions, etc. All these things that evil puts into our minds and that we deal with. All right? This is all these evil thoughts and things being disseminated onto the earth. All right? And what does evil do to us? Or what can evil do to a person? What can it do to the relationship with God? We want to look at him as the Son, right? What happens with these evil thoughts and stuff that start coming into the world? We begin to blank out. It begins to cloud our judgment. It begins to cloud. It separates us from God. All right? And that's a lot what it's talking about here is these evil things that are coming into the world, and people are beginning to take on, all right, that it begins to cloud, and as we've seen today. And again, today is not different much than other times. All right? We're nothing new. It may be a different version, but it's nothing new. Evil has permeated this world since Adam. Okay? Since all that. So that's what this smoke here represents, is that evil that permeates this world, that we can't get away from, that we believe, that we have to deal with all the time. People want to talk about the smoke is the evil influence of Satan which darkens men's mind. Okay? That's what I was trying to get at. Yes, sir. Okay, very good, because the sulfur smell that would be, but the sweet smell of the prayers. Contrast the two. Absolutely. The The sun, which is darkened us, I think does represent Christ or God, the only true light of our world. God uses even the work of the devil as a warning and punishment for the wicked. The blame for the torments which people suffer is not upon God. There's nothing evil about God, okay? It's upon the wicked themselves and upon Satan whom they follow, all right? As we were created pure creatures, right? Adam and Eve didn't know, they were pure before God. Until what? Satan entered the scene, clouded their mind, okay? Clouded their judgment, and then they fell into sin. All right? God didn't do that. It was totally up to them. This is that thing about we have that decision to make ourselves. We can either listen to it or we don't. We can either participate in it or not. It's not upon God, all right? But it's upon ourselves and upon Satan whom they follow. So we see this great evil that's infiltrated the world. We're going to stop there because we're just about out of time. We'll pick up and finish up the rest of these next week, and then hopefully move into the angel and the little scroll next, which is kind of a little interlude, again, with another interlude like before that takes place. So read on there, finish reading chapter 9 there. It's the language there and all that, and the symbolism is very, very intense and all that. And look at this as this is what is happening to evil men upon the world. So we'll pick up there and finish that up next week. Thank you.